Alright guys, so we are now almost a week out from Joe Biden's debate implosion, where he basically showed the entire country that he is fully senile at this point, and as the days go on, it just gets worse and worse for him, okay? It has never been more Jover. So we just got some recent polling data out over the last day or so. This is leaked internal Democratic group polling from a group called Open Labs. And guys, this is shocking, even based on my low expectations for where I thought Joe Biden was. Now, granted, this is just one poll. You can say it's an outlier, but if these results are anywhere close to accurate, Joe Biden is absolutely screwed. So here's what they got. You go state by state. Now, some of these are swing states, right, that should be a 50-50, and some of these are states that Joe Biden confidently won back in 2020 that it looks like he may lose. So you look at the Biden multi-way, Trump multi-way, third party, etc. over on this right side here. And basically what you're going to see is that in every single one of these listed states, outside of Colorado and Minnesota, and maybe you can throw in there the main state, right? Outside of that, in every single one of these other swing states, Joe Biden is losing. And this is post-debate, right? So this is the sort of impact, and you can see the margin drop. That looks to be about 2% on average of a drop for Joe Biden in every single one of these states. Which honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it's not more than that, but still, when you're talking about close elections, that could make the difference. So, I mean, you look at all of these different states that he's losing in, according to this polling data. I mean, you got New Mexico, which should be a safe Democrat state. Virginia, same thing. New Hampshire, same thing. And then you keep going down. I mean, it gets worse. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Joe Biden is losing in every single one of these swing states, right? We're talking about a clean sweep for Donald Trump here. And again, not even just a clean sweep, but expanding on that. Winning all of the normal swing states and then adding some on top of that shouldn't be swing states. So this is what I put this together earlier today. This is what the map looks like right now based on that polling that I just showed you guys. So, I mean, obviously you have Joe Biden winning the safe states of California and New York and whatever else. But I mean, we saw from that polling data, even states like Colorado are potentially in play. States like Minnesota are potentially in play. And then all these other swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, all of these states are swinging towards Trump. We are talking about a historic ass whooping that Joe Biden is staring down the barrel of right now if Democrats don't immediately force him to step down and replace him with basically anybody it looks like would be potentially better than him and have a better shot at preventing Donald Trump from winning this election, which is what Democrats claim is their main priority. You can't have this historically weak candidate leading your ticket after he just showed in the last debate that he's completely senile, and then simultaneously convince me that you guys are desperately trying to defeat Trump. No, if you keep Joe Biden as the leader on your ticket, you are asking to get absolutely curb stomped in this election. We had a couple other things here. So to do a comparison between Biden and some other top Democrats here, as you can see, basically every single option that they put in this list, it's not a complete list, but all the ones that they have here with Buttigieg and Kamala Harris and Newsom and Whitmer, every single one of them is doing better than Joe Biden. In a two-way race, when you do two-way in a tipping point state, and then their expected electoral vote. So it doesn't look pretty for basically any of them outside of, I guess, Buttigieg, and I just almost threw up in my mouth a little bit, as well as Whitmer, which I think is to be expected. But even like Kamala Harris, who I would think would be a ridiculously weak candidate. I've seen other polling data recently that has just shown over the last couple of days. There was one from CNN showing that in a national race, Joe Biden is down to Trump by like 6 percentage points, and Kamala Harris, in a hypothetical, will be down to Donald Trump by like 2 points. So even Kamala Harris might be a better option at this point. Like, I despise basically every single person on this list, and I still think they would be better. At least they have a semi-functioning brain. At least they can go out and campaign. At least they can do like the bare minimum. I mean, at this point, does anybody really believe that Biden is not only going to win this election, but that he'll make it through the next 4 years, 4.5 years? That he'll be cognitively capable of being the president? He's not even capable of doing that right now, and he is the president right now. So are we saying in almost 5 years from now, Joe Biden is going to be mentally fit enough to continue being the president so that he can, run this entire campaign to get reelected, and that maybe he's even going to be alive? I don't know. You guys tell me. Now, again, one other poll here that I was just referencing if you look at the comparison between Harris and Biden, so this was from CNN, Trump leads Biden 49 to 43. So that's a 5-point or so gap there, right? It's 6 points, right? Trump leads Harris 47 to 45 by 2 points. So this is a close race between Trump and Harris, which is saying a lot because, again, Kamala Harris is not the best candidate you could possibly ask for. Far from it, right? But then you look at even further details in this. So with independent voters, Trump is leading Biden by 10 percentage points. But if Kamala Harris was swapped out, then she's actually leading Trump by 3 percentage points. So that's what, a 13-point swing with independents for Kamala Harris over Joe Biden. Is this even a question anymore? I mean, people of color, Biden is plus 21, Harris is plus 29. That could make the difference. Again, I'm not saying this as a member of K-Hive or something. I hate Kamala Harris. She's terrible. She's vapid. She's an establishment corporate candidate. Of course, all of that. But is she better than Joe Biden, marginally at least? Yeah. And she's certainly, it looks like, electorally better than Biden, if your top priority is not allowing Trump to get back to the White House. Now, we also had this here, as pointed out by Jim Sciutto. 3/4 of U.S. voters say the Democratic Party would have a better shot at holding the presidency with someone other than Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. And this is again from that CNN poll. 3/4 of voters. And I'll circle back at the end of this video in terms of what Republicans are doing right now, because believe it or not, shockingly, Republicans actually want Joe Biden to stay at the top of the ticket. Shouldn't really be surprising to anybody. Even Republicans know that Joe Biden is the weakest candidate that Democrats could be putting up right now. So we also have this here in terms of what's going on behind the scenes with Democrats at this moment. Here from Alex Thompson and Axios. He says, inside the chaos in the White House, as many Biden White House and campaign aides are angry, they see a lack of candor from Biden's senior aides, saying, quote, senior leadership has given us nothing. To act like it's business as usual is delusional. And they also say everyone is freaking the fuck out. Yeah, they should be. I mean, they should be. Of course they should be. We all saw what just happened. And by the way, Joe Biden's performance in that debate, sure, it was probably worse than anything I've seen from him, but it's not like it was surprising or shocking. I've been telling you guys about Biden's senility since 2020. I mean, this was something that was brought up in the Democratic primary in 2020. So this didn't come out of nowhere. It's gotten progressively worse as time goes on. That tends to be how, like, dementia works, right? It doesn't usually get better. So, I mean, none of this should be a surprise to anybody, but it's interesting with this reporting because clearly you have, like, Biden's inner circle and his top allies that are basically, after that horrible debate performance, like, hiding him away, sticking their heads in the sand, pretending as if everything is fine, attacking and smearing anybody who has questions, to the point where even his own, aides at the White House are freaking out, and they're saying, you guys aren't even giving us anything. There was another report that came out earlier today or yesterday where Democratic governors around the country basically held like a secret phone call meeting just with each other, right? Not even with their staff, not with anybody else, just the Democratic governors around the country. I think it was called by Tim Walz. And they were basically coming up with a strategy for what the fuck they're going to do moving forward, because they're not getting any information from the Biden White House. And this is something that even I think Pelosi brought up in another interview recently, is she said basically, like, I haven't spoken to Joe Biden since the debate. It's like they're totally cutting everybody off right now because they have no answers. The answer to the question of, was that debate performance an aberration, or is that who Joe Biden actually is on a daily basis? The answer is that that is who he is. That's been who he is for a long time now. So, I mean, Jesus, man, it's just total chaos at the White House. So we have a long list that I have to get to here in terms of people who are calling for Joe Biden to step aside. So here we got Tim Ryan, right? Obviously a prominent Democrat politician, formerly from Ohio, right? He says, we have to rip the Band-Aid off. Too much is at stake. Vice President Harris has significantly grown into her job. Okay, come on, man. She will destroy Trump in a debate. She'd have a better shot than Biden, that's for sure. She could highlight the choice issue, energize our base, bring back young voters, and give us generational change. Okay, so he's hyping up Kamala Harris here a bit too much, right? Let's be real about it. But could she do better than Biden in a debate with Trump? Of course she could. Joe Biden couldn't do anything, especially when it comes to easy issues for Democrats like abortion. I mean, when we had that abortion section during the debate, Joe Biden's answer was incomprehensible. I mean, he was bringing up like immigrants killing Americans and young women, and then he transitioned into talking about how, there's a bunch of incest going on around the country and people are being assaulted by their family members, and then he ended it off with just complete incoherence. This is like your strongest issue, and you couldn't bludgeon Trump over the head with the fact that he installed the Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade and gave us this dystopian, this sporadic hellscape across the country for women who want to have access to abortions. You couldn't even win on that issue, and that should have been your biggest layup. So if you can't do that, then it's beyond just not even being able, to be a good candidate or to be the president right now. You can't even campaign. You can't even advocate for your top policy issues that you care about because you're incapable of doing it. I mean, it's wild, guys. Now we have another one here from Julian Castro, who I believe was the guy back in the 2020 Democratic primary who was bringing up Biden's age concerns. So he's been talking about this for a long time now. He says he is not the campaigner he was in 2020. So he notices that there's even been a drop-off since 2020, which I agree with. But he says, I believe there are stronger options out there for Democrats, objectively true, and he sees a stable of Democrats who would be better, including Vice President Harris. Another Democrat would have a better shot at beating Trump, and that's just objectively true again. Now, we also had Representative Mike Quigley from, I believe, which state is he from? He's from Illinois. And he went on CNN recently. I'm not going to play you guys all of these different clips. We're just going to read what they said for the most part. But he said, it's his decision. I just want him to appreciate at this time just how much it impacts not just his race, but all the other races coming in November. It wasn't just a horrible night. Now, this is, again, absolutely correct, because I've shown you guys the polling data in the past where many of these Democratic Senate and House candidates in swing states are polling in some cases like 5 to 10 percentage points above Joe Biden. So Joe Biden, it's not just that he could lose to Donald Trump, but he could help Republicans take the Senate and keep the House, right? This could make a difference in down ballot races in a very significant way as well. So he's dragging down the entire party at this point. Now, we also had this here. Democratic Representative Lloyd Doggett, who I just heard about for the first time today, has just become the first sitting Democrat in Congress to call for President Biden to withdraw from the 2024 presidential race. Now, we also had, high-profile journalist and author Carl Bernstein, who went on CNN with, I believe, Anderson Cooper, and he said this. He says multiple sources tell him that there have been at least 15 occasions in the last year and a half, I bet there were more, where the president has appeared like he did at that horror show in his debate performance. Bernstein reports that in the last 6 months, sources have told him that there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline. So they're saying basically, yeah, he probably was showing signs of dementia before, but in the last 6 months, it's significantly escalated from there. He says that his sources have gone to Ron Klain in the last year to express concern about the president losing his train of thought and not having the ability to pick up where he left off. He also mentions a fundraiser at the Four Seasons restaurant in New York back in June of last year, where the president, this is a real quote here, guys, became very stiff, almost like a kind of rigor mortis. You guys know what rigor mortis is? Rigor mortis is when your body locks up after you've died. This is where we're at. We have Republicans that are basically like an acceleration to fascism, and then we have Democrats that are basically like a managed decline to fascism, right? A controlled descent into fascism. But in this election, we basically have Trump-style fascism versus a literal corpse. This is where we're at, guys. Now, we also have this here from James Clyburn, obviously one of Biden's top allies, helped him win South Carolina back in the 2020 Democratic primary and, flip it away from Bernie's momentum. He said this, I will support Vice President Kamala Harris if Joe Biden were to step aside. So, listen, this is probably the best that you could get from somebody like James Clyburn, who I think is a ride or die for Biden till the very end. But the fact that he's even saying hey, if Biden wants to step aside, hey, I'll support Kamala Harris, I think that's saying a lot there. Now, we also have this here from Pelosi, again, one of Biden's best friends, top allies, would never dare to question him. But even she is saying, I think it's legitimate. It's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? Dementia is a condition. Okay, so there's the answer to that question. But she says that the question should be asked of both candidates and stresses Biden's legislative accomplishments. So again, listen, you could tout the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Bill, and the CHIPS Act, and whatever else you want. That's not going to be enough if a vast majority of the country thinks that Biden is senile, accurately so. It's just not going to be enough, guys. This is like end of the road type shit. This is not a hurdle that you can just jump over if people do not think he's capable of being a candidate. I showed you polling data. We're months out from the election right now, and almost a majority of Democrats are still saying Biden shouldn't be the nominee. When half of your own party, months out from the election, is saying you're not capable of even running right now, what does that say? I mean, this is not something you could just pretend is not an issue. You guys are heading for absolute disaster right now. And also, as pointed out here by Alex Schultz, I mean, when we're talking about Pelosi even saying, oh, well, it's a legitimate question, this is the same person who was helping to cover up for Dianne Feinstein when she was also clearly completely senile, mentally non-existent, as she was still keeping herself in the Senate, or more accurately, her family and her close advisors were keeping her in the Senate position, basically doing like a Weekend at Bernie's type situation, where she didn't know what was going on, clearly, completely lost, and they all just basically kept denying it. Again, head in the sand, Pelosi was helping to lead the charge on that. So when somebody who helped to cover up for Dianne Feinstein's senility is coming out and saying, well, it's kind of a legitimate question about Biden, again, guys, these are people who would never dare to question Joe Biden or establishment Democrat figures like this. It has to be so abysmally bad for it to get to this point. It's so bad, in fact, that now we even have James Carville. Okay? Carville is coming out and saying, the country wants something new. Let them have it. Guys, Carville is the embodiment of hating change. That's who Carville is. Right? This is a guy who I think in his mind, Bernie Sanders is equivalent to like Hitler, okay? This guy despises fundamental structural change. His whole thing is let's be the neoliberal status quo managerial class. That's his whole thing. And he's saying the country wants something new, let them have it. We need change. Guys, you don't get to closer, more establishment Democrats than somebody like Carville. So when he's saying this, when Pelosi's floating it, when Clyburn is floating it, I mean, we have this from Alex Thompson. Jay Heel is quoting a Dem mega donor. They're pissed, guys. The donors are not happy after what they saw last Thursday. So here's one of these mega donors saying of the Biden team, they lied to us systematically over years. Given the stakes, it's unforgivable and unconscionable. So people have a bunch of questions right now. Right? The donors are pissed. The staffers are pissed. The voters are pissed. Everybody's pissed. And Joe Biden, again, he has his family at the White House right now. I mean, this here from Mehdi Hassan and Ken Delaney. Hunter Biden has joined meetings with the president and his top aides at the White House this week. Some of the reactions from the White House staff has been, what the hell is happening? Guys, he's bringing his family. Like, there's a handful of people that could potentially have the influence over Joe Biden to actually get him to step down, right? It's Obama, who came out and backed him recently, and clearly I think isn't, at least publicly, willing to say that he needs to step aside. You have Jill Biden, you have probably Hunter Biden as well, and then maybe you have a handful of Democratic elites like Pelosi and Schumer and some other ones sprinkled in there. None of them have been aggressively saying he should step down, but with his family, I mean, we saw the Vogue cover and what that article looked like just yesterday with Jill Biden, right? Clearly she wants to remain in power. Clearly Hunter Biden wants to remain in power, right? So if these are the people surrounding him, we're fucked. I mean, we're fucked. I highly doubt that Hunter and Jill Biden are going to be sitting him down and telling him that he needs to drop out. In fact, that's the opposite of what we've been hearing about what they're saying behind the scenes. But as pointed out here by Mehdi Hassan, he says, this is insane. Hunter Biden and Joe's granddaughters seem to have more influence over who the Democratic presidential nominee will be than the Democratic Party leadership. Where are Schumer or Jeffries or the DNC? What do Biden cabinet members make of his recent meltdown? Fully head in the sand. Now, I had to show you guys this little side-by-side here because this was just amazing, right? And it gives you an insight in terms of the total denialism and delusion in the Biden White House right now. So if you guys remember, this is a clip, this is a screenshot here on the left from the debate where he was looking, mouth agape and lost in the void and all of that. And he also looked pretty pale. So basically what happened is a lot of his closest aides and his family members got pissed at CNN because they thought that the makeup they used on Joe Biden, and I guess the lighting, during the debate made him look pale. And that's why people thought he looked old, right? It wasn't the fact that he was, again, staring into the abyss, mouth wide open, couldn't finish his sentences, would just stop his sentences in the middle of them, couldn't answer questions with any coherence whatsoever. It wasn't any of that. It was the makeup, guys. So then yesterday, Biden comes out, he does a short 4-minute sort of like scripted statement that was incredibly weak, by the way, on the SCOTUS decision to make presidents kings by giving Trump immunity, right? And they basically, it looks like, caked him, absolutely caked him up the ass with what looks like bronzer, I guess you would call it, orange makeup. I don't know if he's doing a Trump impression here. Guys, look at the side by side. I didn't Photoshop this. This is real. This is a screenshot or a picture from a TV from his statement yesterday, which, by the way, was a terrible statement. He comes out and he criticized, the Supreme Court decision. He attacks Donald Trump. He didn't really go after the Supreme Court, and he definitely didn't lay out any sort of plan for court reform, which is obviously needed in a moment like this. And he basically just said, well, sure, if Trump gets elected, then he gets to be a dictator, but I'm not going to use any of those levers of power because I'm above that, right? And oh, by the way, I have no plan for court reform. And I mean, we're basically just going to do nothing about this other than send you $20 donation requests into your email inboxes so that you guys will, help us to win in November. That's the Democratic strategy, guys, when it comes to all of this talk about the authoritarian threat to the country posed by Donald Trump and posed by Republicans. The only solution that they have is just vote. Just vote. It's like, and then what? And then what? What would you actually do? If we gave you the Senate, we gave you the House, we gave you the presidency, what would you do to structurally fix this country in any meaningful capacity? And on most of these issues, the answer is nothing really. Nothing really. They just want to be a placeholder so that, like, okay, maybe we'll get fascism like 4 years from now instead of right now immediately. I mean, it's all so embarrassing and pathetic. It's even at the point now where, and I'll link this down below if you guys want to go watch it. It has copyrighted music in it, so I can't play it, but Dave McCormick, okay, up in Pennsylvania trying to run for the Senate seat, is now attacking the Democrat, Bob Casey, along the lines of Bob Casey was out there defending on TV publicly Joe Biden's mental capacity, right? He was defending his competency, right? And so now you have Republican candidates who are running ads that are relying on the entirety of the American people understanding that Biden is senile, and they're running attack ads saying that Democrat helped to cover up the fact that Biden is senile. This is where we're at, guys. They're using these in campaign ads now. And I'll finish off with this. Because again, Republicans know that Joe Biden is weak. They want him to stay on. So we had here from Fox News, a senior House GOP aide was more straightforward in their assessment. He says virtually any Democrat that potentially replaces Biden has an exponentially better chance of defeating Trump. Biden staying at the top of the ticket is the best case scenario for a Republican trifecta. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. So there you have it, guys. Okay. We have, more and more elected Democrats, pundits that you would never think would ever, get to this point, who are coming out and saying, yeah, maybe he should step aside. Maybe we could go with Kamala Harris. You have the Biden campaign that seems to be imploding in on itself. White House staffers are panicking. He's surrounding himself with his family and basically sticking his head in the sand and pretending like everything is fine. And then, you have Republicans that are basically running a preemptive victory lap because they know that Joe Biden is by far the weakest candidate that Democrats could put up right now. So, I mean, here it is, guys. This is the moment. As time goes on, it's probably going to get more and more difficult to replace Joe Biden. If there was ever a moment where this was possible to happen, it's right now, right? You got to get a plan in place. I don't know if this is going to happen at the convention, maybe, but you got to get a plan in place. If Joe Biden is leading the ticket in November, it looks like it's going to be an absolute bloodbath, and nobody can turn around and say that it wasn't predictable.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying